47 seconds. You can perceive that it's a ridiculously short amount of time, less than 1 minute, the time it takes to tie a sneaker, to make coffee, to send a quick message. But 47 seconds can also be enough to destroy a decade-long friendship. It was a Tuesday morning when the internet exploded. The audio was all over social media. A 47-second clip of Steph Curry talking about Klay Thompson in a way no one had ever heard before. The voice was unmistakable. The words were clear, and the impact? Devastating. The headlines screamed from every direction. Steph Curry speaks the truth about Klay Thompson. What Curry really thinks about his partner. End of the partnership? Leaked audio reveals tension. Curry, working with Klay is impossible. To understand how we arrived at this moment of absolute chaos, we need to go back 1 week. We need to return to a quiet night in San Francisco, where no one imagined that words spoken in confidence would become a viral bomb. It was Thursday night, and the Fairmont Hotel at the top of Nob Hill was elegantly illuminated. Not for a public event, not for a celebrity party, but for something much more discreet and significant. A closed charity dinner organized by the Tech Leaders Foundation, an organization that connected business leaders with social causes. 50 people were present: CEOs, technology executives, successful entrepreneurs. No journalists, no official cameras. Just an intimate event for people who wanted to make a difference without spotlights. The air was perfumed with the aroma of gourmet food, and soft conversations echoed through the private hall with a panoramic view of the illuminated bay. Steph Curry was there not as an athlete, but as a guest speaker. Robert Kim, CEO of an artificial intelligence company and a declared Warriors fan, had personally asked Steph to speak about leadership, partnership, and how to build winning teams in the business world. It was familiar territory for Curry, who in recent years had become known not only for his achievements in sports, but for his wisdom about teamwork and organizational culture. How many times in life are you invited to share not what you do, but who you are? Steph was seated at the main table, wearing a dark blue blazer over a white shirt. No tie. Simple. Elegant. He smiled easily, conversing with the business people around him about everything except sports, technology, education, family, faith. These were the things that truly interested him when the lights went out and the crowds disappeared. Robert Kim stepped up to the small improvised stage after dinner, a wireless microphone in hand and genuine enthusiasm on his face. "Folks, all of us here have built something from scratch," he began, his warm voice echoing through the room. "All of us know that success is never individual. It's always about the people around us. And today, we have with us someone who understands this better than anyone." Soft applause filled the by-sea environment. "Steph Curry needs no introduction," Robert continued with a smile. "But what you may not know is that Steph has dedicated as much time to building communities as to breaking records. And today, he's going to share with us about something we all face: how to build true partnerships in a world that values results more than relationships." Steph stood up, shaking Robert's hand and receiving the microphone. There was something different in the way he held that microphone. It wasn't the posture of someone about to give a rehearsed speech. It was the body language of someone about to have a real conversation. "Thank you, Robert," said Steph, his voice soft but clear. "And thank you to everyone for receiving me here. I'm going to be honest. When Robert called me asking me to talk about building winning teams, my first reaction was to laugh. Genuine laughter echoed through the room. Because the truth is, I don't know anything about building perfect teams, he continued. And there was a disarming humility in his words. I only know about building real teams. And real teams are messy. They're complicated. They're full of imperfect people trying to do something bigger than themselves. It's impossible not to feel when someone is speaking from lived experience, not from memorized theory. For the next 20 minutes, Steph spoke about authentic leadership, about the difference between managing talents and honoring people, about how the best results come not from brilliant individuals, but from deep relationships. He didn't use corporate jargon or catchphrases. He spoke like a human being to other human beings. The room was completely absorbed. Executives accustomed to technical presentations were leaning forward, absorbing every word. Because Steph wasn't selling something. He was sharing something. Then came the question and answer portion. Robert returned to the stage, paper and pen in hand, ready to facilitate the conversation. Steph, we have some questions from the audience, said Robert. The first one is about something every leader faces. How do you deal with people, let's say, difficult? Those talented people who have strong personalities, who don't follow the script? Steph smiled, that smile of someone who immediately recognizes what they're talking about. He took a deep breath, and for a moment his eyes became distant, as if he were accessing specific and precious memories. That's a great question, he said, his voice becoming softer, more personal. And I'm going to answer with a real example, because theories mean nothing without practice. The room became even more silent. You could feel the anticipation in the air, thick as fog. I have a work partner, continued Steph, choosing his words carefully. Someone I've worked with for the past several years. And this person, Klay. Klay is one of the most complex human beings I've ever met. Some in the audience smiled, recognizing the name. But no one interrupted. Working with Klay? There are days when it's impossible, said Steph, and there was a raw honesty in his voice. He's stubborn. He's closed off. There are days when he simply doesn't listen to anyone. He processes things internally, in his own time, in his own way. And there are moments where I really think, is it worth it? The room was hypnotized. It was rare to hear this level of transparency, especially from someone as public as Steph Curry. But what no one in that room knew was that, discreetly, in the third row of chairs, a woman had her cell phone partially hidden, recording. Amanda Foster, executive assistant for one of the technology companies present, had decided to capture some cool moments from the event to share later. And she had just recorded exactly 47 seconds. Steph continued speaking, of course. There was much more to say. But Amanda, looking at her phone while Steph spoke, realized she had captured something interesting, something that could generate engagement, something that people would clamor to hear. Have you ever wondered how a decision of a few seconds can trigger consequences impossible to predict? 3 days later, on a Monday afternoon, Amanda was at home browsing her social media. The audio was saved on her phone. She had listened to it several times, and each time she listened, she thought, "This is gold. Steph Curry talking like this about Klay Thompson? Everyone would want to hear this." She didn't. Think about the complete context. She didn't think about the words Steph said afterward. She didn't think about the consequences. She only thought about the numbers, the views, the viral moment. At 2:37 p.m. on a seemingly ordinary Monday, Amanda Foster posted the 47-second audio on Twitter with the caption, "Leaked, Steph Curry speaks the truth about working with Klay Thompson. You won't believe what he said." In 15 minutes, it had 1,000 retweets. In 1 hour, 50,000. In 3 hours, the audio was on every platform. And on Tuesday morning, when the world woke up, the internet was on fire. Sports portals published analyses. Commentators debated on morning shows. Fans divided into digital battlefields. And meanwhile, two men, two brothers who had built something precious over the years, were about to have their friendship tested in a way that neither of them ever imagined. Because 47 seconds, without context, can sound like betrayal. 47 seconds can transform truth into poison. 47 seconds can make the entire world believe they know a story they haven't even begun to understand. What's most impressive is how we live in an era where context matters less than clicks, and truth matters less than speed. And while the audio spread like uncontrollable fire across the internet, somewhere in San Francisco, a phone was ringing. Klay Thompson looked at the screen, seeing messages from friends, notifications, exploding, headlines appearing. And then he clicked on the audio and heard the words of his best friend. Without context, without continuation, without truth, just 47 seconds that seemed to say everything but said nothing. And in that moment, something inside Klay broke. Not from anger, but from pain. The kind of pain that only comes when the person you trust most seems to have exposed your vulnerabilities for the entire world to see. Great things are built when no one is watching, but they can also be destroyed when everyone is looking in the wrong place. And the storm was just beginning. The first thing Klay Thompson felt wasn't anger. It was confusion. That dense and disorienting confusion that comes when something you thought you knew suddenly doesn't make sense anymore. He was at home, in his living room with a view of the bay, when the messages started arriving. First from his brother, then from friends, then from people he didn't even know had his number. All saying the same thing. Did you see? Did you hear? And then he clicked on the link and listened. Working with Klay? There are days when it's impossible. He's stubborn, closed off, doesn't listen to anyone. Sometimes I think, is it worth it? And then silence. End of the audio. 47 seconds that felt like an eternity. Klay placed the phone on the coffee table with hands that didn't tremble. He had learned long ago to control external reactions. But inside, it was a hurricane. How is it possible that words spoken by the person you trust most can hurt more than any criticism from a stranger? He listened to the audio again, and once more, trying to find something that wasn't there, trying to understand the missing context. But all he heard was Steph's voice, that familiar, comfortable voice, saying things that Klay never imagined would be said, especially publicly. The internet didn't waste time. Within hours, the narrative was established. Analyses appeared on every sports portal. TV commentators dissected each word as if they were surgeons analyzing dead tissue. Is this the end of the Splash Brothers era? Curry tired of carrying Klay? The truth Steph never said before. Radio programs opened lines for listeners to give their opinions. Podcasters recorded emergency episodes. And on social media, war was declared. Curry fans defending honesty. Klay fans accusing betrayal. And everyone, absolutely everyone, with strong opinions about a friendship that none of them really knew. In a TV studio in Los Angeles, two commentators debated live. "Look, I respect Curry's transparency," said one of them, gesturing dramatically. Finally, someone being real about what it's like to work with difficult personalities. "But doing it publicly?" countered the other. "That's not transparency. It's disloyalty. You don't expose your partner like that." And on thousands of screens around the country, people who had never met Steph or Klay personally felt qualified to judge a decade-long friendship based on 47 seconds. Naturally, this leads us to understand how we live in an era where everyone has an opinion about lives they've never lived. Meanwhile, Steph was in a meeting with his public relations team. 3 people sitting around a table, laptops open, tense expressions. "We need a statement," said Sarah Mitchell, his PR manager for 6 years. "The narrative is getting out of control." "What narrative?" responded Steph, frustration evident in his voice. "There is no narrative. They took half of a sentence and turned it into a headline." "I know," said Sarah softly, "but the public doesn't know that. They only know what they heard." Steph ran his hand over his face, tired. He had tried to call Klay 3 times. All went straight to voicemail. He sent messages. No response. And that hurt more than any sensationalist headline. "I need to talk to him first," said Steph. "Before any public statement, I need Klay to know the truth." "He's not answering?" asked Sarah, already knowing the answer from Steph's expression. "No," he replied, his voice laden with a sadness that few could draw from him. "And I don't blame him." Have you ever wondered how long it takes to break trust, and how much longer it takes to rebuild it? At that moment, Steph's phone vibrated. It was a message from his father, Del Curry. "Son, I saw what's happening. Call me when you can. Remember, the truth always has time to appear. Don't let the world's rush dictate your timing." Steph smiled slightly. His father always knew what to say, but the smile lasted only 1 second before reality returned. Because at that exact moment, somewhere in San Francisco, his best friend was in pain, and Steph couldn't reach him. On the other side of the city, Klay finally turned off his phone. He silenced all notifications and sat in absolute silence for long minutes. His dog, Rocco, approached and placed his head in his lap, sensing his owner's emotional tension. "It's funny, Rocco," said Klay out loud to the animal, his voice hoarse. "You spend years building something, trust, friendship, partnership, and then 47 seconds. That's all it takes to question everything." But while Klay processed his pain, something inside him resisted. A small but insistent voice. The voice of true friendship that doesn't die easily. The voice that said, "This doesn't make sense. You know Steph. You know who he is." It's impossible not to feel the internal conflict when the heart and mind fight between present pain and shared history. And then Klay did something that surprised even himself. He opened the coffee table drawer and took out a framed photo. It wasn't a game photo. It wasn't a trophy photo. It was a photo from almost 10 years ago when everything was just beginning. 2 young guys sitting on the bench during practice. Huge smiles, arms around each other's shoulders. Before fame exploded, before million-dollar contracts, before the entire world had an opinion about them. Klay remembered that day. Steph had just made an impossible shot in practice, and Klay had shouted, "Man, you're crazy!" And Steph had laughed and responded, "We're crazy, together. We're crazy, together." Those words echoed now, years later, in a moment where everything seemed to be falling apart. And Klay found himself thinking, can a friendship built over a decade really be defined by 47 seconds? But before he could fully process that thought, his phone, which he had silenced but not turned off, vibrated with a notification that changed everything. It was a post on Twitter from Amanda Foster, the woman who had leaked the audio, and what she wrote made Klay's blood run cold. About the Steph Curry audio. "We need to talk. I have the complete audio, and you guys have no idea what he said afterward. I was approached by a news portal that wants the exclusive. Should I release it? The comments exploded immediately. Yes, release it. We need the truth. There's more? What did he say? This is going to be a bomb. Klay read that post 3 times, and with each reading, a different emotion passed through him. First, anger. Anger that someone was treating his friendship as entertainment. Then, curiosity. What else had been said? And finally, something he didn't expect. Hope. Because if there was more in the audio, maybe, just maybe. The 47 seconds weren't the complete story. What's most impressive is how a small piece of information can transform despair into hope in a matter of seconds. In the following hours, Amanda's post went viral even faster than the original audio. News portals competed to get the exclusive. Financial offers appeared. And meanwhile, Amanda Foster was sitting in her apartment, slowly realizing she had created something much bigger than she imagined. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Emails flooded her inbox. And amid all of this, a message from an unknown number appeared. Amanda, this is Steph Curry's team. We need to talk urgently. Amanda looked at that message for long minutes. The offers from gossip portals were tempting. Easy money, maximum attention, 15 minutes of fame guaranteed. But something in the message from Steph's team made her pause. Maybe it was the word urgently. Maybe it was conscience beginning to weigh. Or maybe it was the slow realization that she had become part of something that was causing real pain to real people. While Amanda decided what to do, in an improvised conference room, Steph's team was in total crisis mode. If she releases the rest of the audio to a tabloid first, we lose control of the narrative completely, said Sarah, typing furiously on her laptop. What if she doesn't release anything? Asked another team member. Do we continue in this limbo where everyone thinks they know the truth but knows nothing? Steph was standing at the window, looking at the city below. People living their lives, without having any idea of the chaos happening in that room. And all he could think about was Klay, about how his best friend was feeling at that moment. I'm going to do a press conference, said Steph suddenly, turning to the team. What? Sarah almost knocked over her coffee. Steph, we can't. Yes, we can, he interrupted, and there was a determination in his voice that no one dared question. I have the complete recording. I recorded the entire talk on my phone. And whether this Amanda is going to release it or not doesn't matter, because I'm going to tell the complete truth. My way. In my time. The room fell silent. Sarah looked at him for a long moment and then nodded slowly. Okay, she said, then let's do this right. But Steph, are you sure? Once you do this, there's no going back. I know, he replied, but you know what there's no going back from? Letting my best friend think I betrayed him. That I won't let happen. Not for one more second. And in that moment, as Steph made the decision that would change everything, his phone rang. It was Klay. Finally. Steph answered before the second ring. Klay! I saw her post, said Klay, his voice controlled but tense. What did you really say, Steph? I need to know. Not from a leak. Not from the internet. From you. And there, in that call, with the entire world speculating and the internet on fire, 2 friends who had built something precious were about to have the most important conversation of their lives. But what neither of them knew was that, in the next 24 hours, the complete truth would not only free them, it would transform millions. The call lasted only 3 minutes, but they were 3 minutes that changed everything. Steph didn't make excuses, didn't throw blame at anyone. He simply told Klay, "I'm going to do a press conference tomorrow. I'm going to play the complete audio, and I'm going to tell the story the world needs to hear. But before that, you need to hear it from me. Now." And then, right there, with his team listening in respectful silence, Steph told Klay exactly what he had said that night at the charity dinner. Every word, every pause, every emotion. When he finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. A silence so deep that Steph could hear Klay's controlled breathing. "Brother," was all Klay could say before his voice failed. I should have known, should have trusted." "No," interrupted Steph gently. 47 seconds without context can make anyone doubt. I don't blame you. Not for 1 second. No one could imagine that this moment would be the turning point, not just for two friends, but for millions of people who were about to witness something extraordinary. The next morning, Wednesday at 10 a.m., the conference hall of a hotel in downtown San Francisco was packed. Journalists from every possible outlet, TV cameras, photographers. The noise of nervous conversations and camera clicks created a chaotic symphony of anticipation. Everyone knew that Steph Curry had called an urgent press conference, but no one knew exactly what he was going to say. The speculations were endless. Is he going to apologize? Will he sue whoever leaked it? Will he confirm problems with Klay? Will he announce the end of the partnership? But when Steph entered that room, there was something in his posture that instantly silenced the crowd. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't defensiveness. It was simply peace. The peace of someone who knows they're about to speak truth, and truth doesn't need armor. He stepped up to the small stage, adjusted the microphone, and took a deep breath. To his right, a screen was mounted. To his left, a sound system. And in his hands, a phone with the complete audio of the talk. "Good morning," he began, his calm voice echoing through the now silent room. "Thank you for coming. I'm going to be brief, because I think you deserve to hear the truth without beating around the bush. You can perceive that moments of absolute truth have a different weight in the air. A few days ago, an audio of me leaked," continued Steph. 47 seconds where I talk about my friend Klay Thompson in a way that was misinterpreted, not through the fault of those who heard it, but because 47 seconds don't tell any story. They just start one. He looked directly at the cameras, and today, I'm going to tell the complete story. Not because I owe the world an explanation about my friendship, but because this story is bigger than me and Klay. It's about all of us, about how we judge quickly, about how context matters, and about what true friendship really means. The room was so silent that you could hear the humming of the air conditioning. "I'm going to play the complete audio now," said Steph, "and afterward, I'm going to explain what the words mean. But first, I want you to understand something. The man who asked the question that led to this response had no bad intention. The event was private, and the person who recorded and posted, she has already reached out to me. We've already talked, and I've already forgiven her, because holding grudges doesn't build anything. How is it possible that someone chooses forgiveness when anger would be so much easier?" Steph picked up the phone and connected it to the sound system. And then, for the first time, the entire world heard not just 47 seconds, but the complete 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Steph's voice echoed through the speakers, that same voice that had gone viral, but now with context, with continuation, with truth. Working with Klay? There are days when it's impossible. He's stubborn. He's closed off. There are days when he simply doesn't listen to anyone. And there are moments where I think, is it worth it? The room held its breath. Everyone already knew this part. But then came what no one had heard. And then I remember, the recorded voice of Steph continued. And there was a change in tone, a softness, a deep emotion. I remember a specific day, a few years ago. It was the worst day of my life. It's impossible not to feel when someone is about to share something deeply personal. A few years ago, someone very close to me betrayed me professionally. The recording continued, and now it was possible to hear the emotion in the voice even through the compressed audio. Something I had invested time, trust, energy in, everything collapsed in a way I never imagined possible. And when I discovered the truth, it wasn't anger I felt first. It was pain, a deep pain. In the conference room, experienced journalists had tears in their eyes, because this was no longer a story about sports. It was a story about humanity. On that specific day, when everything came to light, Steph's voice in the audio continued. I was sitting alone at home, questioning everything. Whether I could trust again, whether it was worth opening up, whether it was worth believing in people. And the part of me that had always been strong was trying to force me to continue, to function, not to feel. But I was broken, completely broken. Steph, standing on the stage live, closed his eyes for a moment. Reliving that memory never got easier. I couldn't get out of bed, the audio continued. Physically I could, of course, but emotionally it was impossible. And then, at 6 in the morning, someone knocked on my door. It was Klay. What's most impressive is when we realize that the best friendships aren't built in moments of glory, but in moments of pain. He didn't call beforehand, didn't send a message asking if he could come. He just showed up, came in, sat on the edge of my bed, and stayed there, in silence, for 2 entire hours. Some journalists were now discreetly wiping their eyes. And when I finally managed to speak, Steph's audio continued, his voice breaking slightly. When I finally managed to say something, you know what Klay said? He said, "You don't have to be strong today. I'll be strong for both of us." And he was. He canceled everything he had, stayed with me all day, didn't try to fix anything, didn't try to make me feel better with empty words. He simply was present. The conference room was now in absolute silence. The kind of silence that only comes when people witness raw truth and authentic vulnerability. So, when they ask me if working with Klay is worth it, the audio reached its conclusion. When they ask me if it's worth dealing with someone difficult, the answer is, when that person is real, when that person shows up when you need them most, when that person loves you not for what you produce, but for who you are, it's worth everything. Klay isn't my work partner. Klay isn't my colleague. Klay is my brother, and I would choose to work with him, alongside him, every day of my life. Because real people are rare, and when you find one, you don't let go. The audio ended, and for 5 entire seconds, no one in the room moved. And then, something extraordinary happened. A journalist in the back of the room started applauding, slowly, and then another joined in, and another, and within seconds, the entire room was on its feet, applauding. Experienced journalists, accustomed to maintaining professional distance, were applauding with tears running down their faces. Because they were no longer journalists covering a story. They were human beings witnessing something that touched the soul. Steph waited for the applause to diminish, but when he opened his mouth to speak again, his voice was choked. "Sorry," he said, wiping his own eyes. "This story never gets easier to tell, because that day defined what friendship means to me. And seeing those 47 seconds being used to create division, to suggest there are problems where there's only love, that hurt. Not for me, but for Klay, because he deserves better." He looked directly at the cameras, knowing Klay was watching. "Klay, if you're seeing this, you're the best human being I know. And I'm sorry my words were cut in a way that hurt you. But the truth has always been that you're my brother. Yesterday, today, always." And then, in a moment that no one in the room would ever forget, something unexpected happened. The side door of the conference hall opened, and Klay Thompson walked in. There was nothing planned, no prior coordination. Klay was simply watching from his house, heard the words, and knew he needed to be there. Needed the world to see, with their own eyes, that some friendships don't break. They bend, they're tested, but they don't break. The cameras exploded in flashes. Journalists stood up, but Steph and Klay barely noticed, because in that moment there were only two friends, two brothers, walking toward each other. They met in the middle of the room, and without a word, they embraced. It wasn't the type of quick greeting hug. It was the embrace of those who went through a storm and came out the other side. The embrace of mutual forgiveness, of gratitude, of unconditional love. Isn't it incredible how an embrace can say more than 1,000 words? When they separated, Klay took the microphone that Steph had left on the stage. "I didn't come here planning to speak," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "But after hearing that, I need to say something." He looked at Steph, and then at the cameras. "Steph is right. I am stubborn. I am closed off. There are days when I'm impossible. And he's the only one who never gave up on me. When the entire world wrote me off as difficult or problematic, Steph saw me, the real person, and chose to stay." Tears were now flowing freely down Klay's face. "And when that audio leaked, when I heard those words out of context, it hurt. I won't lie. It hurt deeply. But you know what hurt more? It was doubting, even for a second, a friendship that has always been real. Because Steph never gave me a reason to doubt. Never. It was me and the world that tried to create something that didn't exist." He turned completely toward Steph. "So, thank you, brother, for defending me, for telling our story, and especially for being you, consistently, even when it's difficult." And there, in that embrace, in those words, the truth was finally complete. It wasn't 47 seconds of speculation. It was years of real, authentic friendship being honored in the way it deserved. The press conference ended shortly after, but the impact was just beginning. Because that video, that truth, that pure demonstration of friendship, was going to change much more than just the narrative about two athletes. It was going to change the way millions of people viewed friendship, context, and what really matters. The video of the press conference went live, but what happened in the following hours was something no one could have predicted. In 2 hours, 15 million views. In 6 hours, 50 million. By the next morning, the video had reached 120 million people around the world. But it wasn't just about the numbers. It was about what those numbers represented. Because for the first time in a long while, something viral on the internet wasn't destroying. It was building. Naturally, this leads us to understand the power that complete truth has when it finally finds its way. The hashtags dominating social media weren't gossip or speculation. They were real friendship. Context matters. Chatter brothers for life. And under those hashtags, millions of people shared their own stories. A 42-year-old man in Ohio posted, "I had a best friend in college. We fought over a misunderstanding 10 years ago. We never spoke again. After seeing Steph and Klay, I called him. We talked for 3 hours. The friendship I thought was dead was just waiting for context and forgiveness." A woman in London wrote, "My sister and I haven't spoken for 2 years because of something she said about me. But I never asked for context, never let her explain. Today, I called and discovered everything was a misunderstanding. Thank you, Steph and Klay, for reminding me that relationships are worth the fight." Have you ever wondered how many friendships are destroyed not by actual betrayal, but by lost context? In the following days, something extraordinary began to happen. TV programs changed their focus. Instead of speculating about controversies, they began inviting people to talk about friendships that survived storms. Podcasters dedicated entire episodes to discussing the importance of context before judgment. And in schools, teachers used the video as a teaching tool about media literacy and empathy. But perhaps the most profound transformation happened with the person who started it all. Amanda Foster was in her apartment 3 days after the press conference when there was a knock at her door. She opened it with hesitation, and there was Sarah Mitchell, Steph, Curry's PR manager. "Amanda?" asked Sarah gently. "Can we talk?" Amanda felt her stomach turn. She had posted a public apology on social media. She had tried to contact Steph's team, but she didn't expect a personal visit. Yes, of course," she said, inviting Sarah to come in. They sat in the small living room, and for a moment there was only uncomfortable silence. "I know you already apologized publicly," Sarah began. "And Steph saw it. He asked me to come here personally to tell you something." Amanda braced herself for the worst. "A lawsuit? A cease and desist order?" "He forgives you," Sarah said simply, completely, without conditions. "And he wants to know, would you be interested in working with his foundation?" Amanda blinked, confused. "What?" "Steph believes that you understand now, better than anyone, the impact that context, or lack of it, can have," Sarah explained. "He's launching an initiative about responsible media and critical thinking. And he thinks that you, with your experience, could help teach others about the consequences of seeking clicks instead of truth. How is it possible that someone transforms the person who hurt them into an ally to prevent others from being hurt?" Tears ran down Amanda's face. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "Maybe not," Sarah agreed gently. "But Steph doesn't operate on a merit system. He operates on a grace system. And grace isn't about what we deserve. It's about what we need to grow." 2 weeks later, Amanda Foster was on a panel at a digital journalism conference telling her story. Not with pride, with devastating humility. And her message was clear. 47 seconds almost destroyed a decade-long friendship. And I was responsible. Not because I'm a bad person, but because I valued engagement more than truth. And that's a choice all of us, in the digital age, face every day. Her testimony became mandatory coursework in several journalism schools, and Amanda became one of the most respected voices on digital ethics and consequences of irresponsible viral content. Meanwhile, Steph and Klay, they returned to their lives. But something had changed. Not between them. Their friendship had always been solid, but in the way people saw them. 1 month after the press conference, they appeared together on a popular podcast, not to talk about the incident, but to talk about male friendship, vulnerability, and why men need safe spaces to be emotional. "You know what's funny?" said Klay during the podcast, with that calm way that was so characteristic of him. "Society teaches us that men need to be tough, independent, that asking for help is weakness. But that day Steph talked about, when his grandmother passed away, and I just showed up, it wasn't heroism, it was just basic humanity. And that's what's most lacking in the world," added Steph. "Not grand gestures, but simple presence, showing up, being there, letting someone be vulnerable without judgment. It's impossible not to feel the depth of a friendship when both sides allow themselves to be completely human." The podcast episode had over 20 million downloads, and in the comments, story after story of men who had never expressed emotions, finally calling friends, finally saying, "I need you," finally allowing themselves to be vulnerable. A movement was born from that moment, called Context Before Judgment. Organizations, schools, and companies began implementing the principle: before reacting to any information, seek the complete context. Before sharing, verify. Before judging, listen. 6 months after the incident, Steph and Klay were invited to speak at the United Nations about the impact of disinformation and the importance of complete narratives. There, in front of representatives from around the world, Steph said something that would be quoted for years. "We live in an era of clips, of headlines, of 47 seconds, and these fragments are dangerous not because they're lies, but because they're incomplete truth. And incomplete truth is sometimes more destructive than complete lies, because it seems real enough to believe, but it's missing the context that transforms understanding." Klay added, "And the solution isn't simply to pause and think, although that helps. The solution is to build relationships strong enough to survive misunderstandings. Because there will be misunderstandings. Always. But when you have a solid foundation, when you have shared history, when you have real love, you can survive the storm until the truth appears." What's most impressive is how a crisis can become a catalyst for global change when the right people respond in the right way. 1 year after the leaked audio, the Tech Leaders Foundation, the same organization that had hosted that fateful dinner, held a special event. And this time, it was public. 1,000 people present, live streaming to millions. The theme: Great Things Happen When No One is Watching. Steph and Klay were the main speakers, but also there was Amanda Foster, telling her journey of redemption. Robert Kim, the CEO who had asked the original question, speaking about intention versus impact. And Sarah Mitchell, discussing how to manage crises with grace. 1 year ago, Steph began on stage, Klay by his side. A private moment became public, and it almost cost something precious. But today, looking back, I see that that moment, as painful as it was, taught the world something crucial. He looked at Klay, who nodded encouragingly. It taught that context matters, that real friendships survive, that forgiveness is possible, and that sometimes the biggest lessons come from the biggest pains. Klay took the microphone, and it taught that great things really do happen when no one is watching. That moment at 6 in the morning at Steph's house, no one was there, no cameras, no audience. It was just two friends, one breaking and the other holding the pieces. But it was that moment, that private moment, that defined everything. He smiled, and when the entire world was watching, when chaos was at its peak, It was that private moment that sustained us. Because great friendships aren't built on stages. They're built in quiet rooms, in difficult early mornings, in choices to show up when no one else is watching. The audience rose in applause, but Steph raised his hand gently, asking for silence one more time. "I want to finish by saying one thing," he said, his voice laden with emotion. "For anyone watching this who is carrying pain from a misunderstanding, for anyone who lost a friendship because context was lost, for anyone who judged too quickly or was judged without a chance to explain." He paused, letting the words breathe. "It's not too late. It's never too late. Pick up the phone. Send the message. Have the difficult conversation. Ask for the missing context. And if you were the one who caused the pain, do what Amanda did. Take responsibility. Seek redemption. Because every story deserves to be told completely. And every true friendship deserves the chance to survive." That night, after the event, Steph and Klay were on the hotel rooftop, looking at the illuminated city below. No cameras, no microphones, just two friends, as they always had been. "Crazy to think that 1 year ago, 47 seconds almost ended everything," said Klay, hands in pockets. "They didn't almost end it," corrected Steph. "They tested it. But there's no test our friendship can't pass. Because it's built on something bigger than moments. It's built on years, on choices, on presence." Klay smiled. "You got very philosophical, man." "Learned from the best," responded Steph, patting his friend's shoulder. And there, in that moment no one was recording, that no news portal would cover, that no hashtag would capture, was the purest truth. Real friendship doesn't need a stage. Doesn't need public validation, doesn't need constant proof. Real friendship just exists, quietly powerful, consistently present, eternally valuable. And while the world kept turning, with its headlines and its clips and its 47 seconds of lost context, two people knew something that not all the noise of the internet could shake. When you know who you are to someone, and when you know who someone is to you, no leaked audio can change that. No misunderstanding can destroy that. No test can break that. Because some things are simply sacred. And true friendship? The kind built in difficult early mornings, in silent presence, in daily choices to show up? That's the most sacred of all. Great things happen when no one is watching. But when everyone finally watches, those great things shine so bright they transform not just those who built them, but everyone who witnesses them. And that's the real story. Not of 47 seconds, but of a decade of brotherly love, of private moments that defined public character, of a friendship that survived because it was built to survive. And in the end, it doesn't matter how many people are watching. What matters is who you are when no one is watching. Because it's there, in that private and sacred space, that everything that really matters is built.